So a lot of people, when they start diets, they kind of assume that that is the end of any sort of variety in their meal. Because I get it. Arbitrarily, you kind of think, okay, if I'm on a diet, I'm going to be restricting myself from foods that I like, foods that are quote unquote bad for. People have a hard time kind of conceptualizing that if they just simply take the concepts of the food they like, but swapped out the ingredients in order to make them quote unquote healthier or more macro friendly, that they can easily eat the foods that they enjoy with no problem. And I feel like a useful tool when you're designing a diet for yourself that makes sense for you is to find foods that are very versatile. Ooh. Find things that you can use in a lot of different types of dishes. And for me, there is nothing more versatile than cottage cheese. Now, when I first got into cottage cheese, and when I say first got into it, I mean just first like found out that it existed and is like an actual food that exists in the world, I thought there's no way that's going to be good. First off, it looks chunky, and that upsets me. Also, I never understood if it was savory or sweet, because sometimes I see it by itself, but then sometimes I see it with fruit, and that always confused the shit out of me. And then trying to imagine eating fruit with cheese made me just like impulsively throw up in my mouth. So I just avoided it. I was like, ew, I don't want to eat cheese and fruit. I just want to eat fruit or cheese, but I want my cheese on like a sandwich. I don't want it to be like a pudding. That's just like how I imagined it. It didn't make any sense. I didn't realize that cottage cheese, I wasn't thinking about the fact that cottage cheese was like a macro friendly thing. I wasn't thinking about the fact that it had a lot of protein and a lot of like, healthy fats, things like that. I didn't give a shit. It's only now that I'm like actually thinking about food and kind of looking at it for what it is that certain foods end up coming up all the time. And when I was studying nutrition and when I was looking up all these recipes that people were making online, cottage cheese kept coming up and I was like, why? But then I realized people were kind of doing something different, so I really looked into it. And what I've realized is that cottage cheese can be changed to do a lot of things, which is interesting and exciting. Now, I'm hoping that you go and actually do your research on how like cottage cheese can be made, because there's really a litany of things. But what I've realized is that first, it starts with changing the texture. See, you should be utilizing cottage cheese as kind of like a base for other things. Specifically, in my opinion, the best way of doing it is for like dips. High protein, low calorie dips. Let me give you an example. I did not know until recently that if you take cottage cheese and you blend it, that by blending it, you change the texture to be a much more creamy texture and not that weird chunky texture that you kind of see peripherally. Ooh, not chunky. Suddenly a good idea. I didn't know that you can take, for example, like a baking dish, put a bunch of cottage cheese in there, put something like buffalo sauce, cheese, like cheddar cheese, and shredded chicken, mix that all up, and if you just baked it, you would make a buffalo chicken dip. And I was like, wait a minute, if I can do that, then what else could I do? Because the idea here is that you're just changing the texture to be more fitting to foods that you like. And we'll get to sweet stuff in a second, but just consider some things. Let's try something else. Let's take cottage cheese that, again, we're blending to be more of a creamy texture. Add, I don't know, ground beef, maybe a little bit of taco seasoning, maybe a little bit of hot sauce. All of a sudden, you now have a salsa dip or like a taco dip, whatever the fuck you want to call it. There's a versatility that I didn't understand existed with cottage cheese because I always assumed cottage cheese to be just like what I saw on the shelf at the store. I didn't consider the fact that you can actually make things with it. And that's just on the savory side. I'm seeing people making dessert with it. Hell, I saw someone recently make pancakes with it where they just added pancake mix, that like a banana, and then obviously like sweetener and cinnamon, things like that, and it made high protein pancakes that don't, like, when you bite into the pancake, it doesn't taste like cottage cheese, or it doesn't taste like what you imagine cottage cheese to taste like. Because I guess I don't even know what cottage cheese tastes like on its own because I never even tried it on its own. I've only ever done it as like these recipes. But cottage cheese is such a powerful thing. First off, it's high protein, like I said, so it's gonna keep you full regardless. Second, it's low in calories compared to other foods of its nature. Things like sour cream or certain yogurt, so on and so forth. And that versatility, I just didn't know. And I'm hoping that by me kind of talking about it in this video, that people will go, oh wait, cottage cheese can be used for other things, and they'll be more willing to try. People are able to make chocolate mousse with them. People are able to make cheesecake with it. Cottage cheese is crazy, and most people I'm seeing online aren't just eating it. Now, you do have people who like to eat it just like with fruit, and that's weird. But, aside from that, it's just a tool that's really good for making certain dishes. And I don't know, I just think that like it's a very underrated thing. I mean, if you go on like a TikTok, YouTube, and you look up cottage cheese, you're gonna find a ton of people making recipes. It's really easy to find it. But I needed someone doing what I'm doing right now, to be like, yo, dude, it actually doesn't taste like cottage cheese. It just adds that kind of protein and texture, that creamy texture once you blend it, but it doesn't taste like cottage cheese. Because I see all these recipes where I see them add something and I'm like, no, I don't want that. But I don't realize that it's more of a texture thing. It's more of an addition. It's not going to just take it over. Like for a long time, I didn't want to eat avocados because anytime I ate anything with avocados overpowered the entire thing. That's all I could take. It took me a while to kind of get into it. And I fear that because I think there's nothing more frustrating in a diet than when you spend money on something that you deem is going to be healthy for you. And then you find out, oh, I actually don't like how this tastes and this kind of sucks. That's a very frustrating feeling. So I don't know, take it from me. Cottage cheese is a very powerful thing. You should be doing it. And there's a lot of powerful things that I don't realize, but luckily I, trial and error it, which is what you should be doing. You should be experimenting. You shouldn't just like go online and find like a recipe and just like dive into it and only do that. Like take concepts and then run with them, use them as practice if you're not very skilled with cooking, but then like just, do everything on your own and figure out what fits you. I don't know. That's just